responsible because neither one tried to stop it from happening. Upon release, both Thompson and Venables had lost all trace of their Liverpool accents. In a psychiatric report prepared in 2000 prior to Venables' release, he was described as posing a trivial risk to the public and unlikely to reoffend. The chances of his successful rehabilitation were described as very high. No significant publication or vigilante action against Thompson or Venables has occurred, to our knowledge. Despite this, Bulger's mother, Denise, told how in 2004 she received a tip-off from an anonymous source that helped her locate Thompson. Upon seeing him, she was paralyzed with hatred and was unable to confront him. See, it never ends. It never ends for that victim. It never ends for the victim's family. They're victims also. In April of 2007, documents released under the Freedom of Information Act confirmed that the Home Office had spent £13,000 on an injunction to prevent a foreign magazine from revealing the new identities of Thompson and Venables. On March 14th of 2008, an appeal to set up a Red Balloon Learner Center in Merseyside in memory of James Bulger was launched by Denise Fergus, his mother, and Esther Ranson. A memorial garden in Bulger's memory was created in Sacred Heart Primary School in Kirby. He would have been expected to attend the school had he not been murdered. Bulger's parents, Ralph and Denise, divorced in 1995, and Denise married Stuart Fergus in 1998. Many, many times in these families where you have this kind of trauma, there's a divorce. The parents cannot keep it together. They can't deal with the immense emotions that this brings out. It ruins their marriage, it ruins their family life. There's always this sense of guilt. There's this new show on called Found. If you get a chance to watch it, it's on Tuesday nights. And it is a story about how this lady was abducted when she was a child by this man, they call him Sir, who he didn't physically abuse them, but he mentally abused her. Wanted her, like he would come in from work and make her read these classic novels, and they would have discussions about them. He kidnapped her like as a companion. And then the storyline goes, she eventually escaped, and now she has him in her basement, locked up and chained up, and he helps her solve missing person crimes. So she works independently of the police department, and it's such a good show. But one of the characters on that show had a child who was abducted from the train station, and they're telling these stories now as this show goes on. And this mother, every single day, she's never missed a day in 23 years, I think. She goes to the bus area where that boy was kidnapped, and she sits there waiting on him to return, just in case he should come back. She never, ever gives up hope. But what happened in the meantime was she lost her marriage, she lost her children, her other children, and this last storyline was about the daughter, who was now 18, coming back to speak to her. Hadn't talked to her in, I think, 10 years. Because she wanted to be emancipated so that she would get more federal loans and school help to pay for school. So her mother, she finally figured out through that short time with her mother that her mother was, mentally ill. She was obsessed with finding her brother, and that she didn't really mean to discard her other children. She just couldn't deal with it any other way. And we see that in these marriages, we see that in these families, it literally can destroy a family. So if you wanted to look at that side of it, that goes into that, all that guilt, like the husband might be able to move on, but the wife cannot, the mother cannot move on, or vice versa. Maybe the other children who are left feel like they're neglected because all the attention is on that person who is missing, and it causes them a lot of trauma. It just really decimates that family unit in many of our cases like this. So it's not just this we're talking about, people. It's not just these children and their development and what happened to them to cause them to become violent offenders. It's talking about how it we're talking about how it destroys whole families. And I've not even really touched the surface of how the parents or family members of the actual serial killers, how do they feel? Now I've read a few things, I've researched a few things, but not anything extensive enough to talk about it at this point in time. We'll do that at a later time because I am interested in that. We know that BTK's daughter has taken it upon herself to work with the FBI to help solve cases that her father may be attached to or responsible for. So, she's trying to make something good out of something so horrific. And, she had a good relationship with her dad. Thought he was wonderful. And there are really some beautiful pictures of them together, like on their wedding day and that kind of thing, on her wedding day. So sometimes we forget when we look at these people as being monsters that they did have a life before this happened. They did have relationships, usually. It's very difficult to think about them in a normal context because they're so extraordinary now that we know that they're serial killers or they're violent offenders. But it doesn't just affect the person who's dead and their immediate family. It's like dropping a pebble in the water and watching all those ripples go out. It affects so many people, so many lives. And that's why it's important for us to try and make a difference and stop it. That's why it's important. In March of 2010, a call was made to raise the age of criminal responsibility in England from 10 to 12. Children's Commissioner Maggie Atkinson said that the killers of James Bulger should have undergone programs to help turn their lives around rather than being prosecuted. The Ministry of Justice rejected the call, saying that children over the age of 10 knew the difference between bad behavior and serious wrongdoing. I agree. In April of 2010, a 19-year-old man from the Isle of Man was given a 3-month suspended prison sentence for claiming in a Facebook message that one of his former work colleagues was Robert Thompson. And by the way, we have listeners in the Isle of Man. So welcome, listeners in the Isle of Man. We are so glad you're with us. In passing sentence, Deputy High Bailiff Alastair Montgomery said that the teenager had put that person at significant risk of serious harm and in a perilous position by making the allegation. I get it. I get it. And it was a suspended sentence, but it's going to follow him, 19 years old. If he did it for sensationalism, shame on him, right? But who did it hurt, really? In 2010, the Ministry of Justice revealed that John Venables had been returned to prison for an unspecified violation of the terms of his license of release, which here in America we would call probation. Justice Secretary Jack Straw stated that Venables was returned to prison because of extremely serious allegations and stated that he was unable to give further details of the reasons for John Venables' return to custody because it was not in the public interest to do so. Following the Sunday Mirror's claim on March 7th that premature disclosure of details of Venables' return to custody was not in the public interest, and that the motivation throughout has been solely to ensure that some extremely serious allegations are properly investigated and that justice is done. And as unfortunate as it seems, that it has to be that way. For them to be able to do a thorough and proper investigation, the public just cannot know. Think about it. If they had known in this case that the exact location that Bulger's body was found at the railway, man, there are people who would have flocked to that area to see that area, just to look and see where that body was and what had happened. And it could have destroyed evidence, which would have perhaps made it almost impossible to convict Venable and Thompson. So we have to respect how justice, the wheels of justice, they turn slow. That's a very old adage, but it's a very true adage. You've got to make sure that you're doing, you know, as a former journalist, let me just say there are aspects of things that you just don't write and publish. I was a journalist 20 odd years ago, and times have certainly changed for reporters and journalists. Um, my goodness, we would have never published anything that wasn't true. And when I say true, I mean we had some background, we had some identified person who was worthy and trustworthy, and you didn't publish anything unless you had the facts. It was just the facts. I mean, it's just not that way now. You don't even know if what you're reading is true, if it's factual. You don't know half the time where did the information come from? Was it a reliable source? People, they just don't look at it like that. So I have no doubt that if given the opportunity, some of these publications, newspapers, media would publish all the information they possibly could to get the hits, because that equals money. It's not about what's best for the family. It's not about what's best for the investigation. It's about how many readers can I get popped on my site today if I publish this and, sensationalize this whole thing. That's what it's about. And it's unfortunate because we rarely think, I say we, not me certainly, but other people who do these things rarely think about the consequences to the people involved in the case. So it's a really messed up world we live in that regard.